This time, China and the United States have signed 15 major trade deals worth $250 billion with Chinese officials calling it a miracle on the signing ceremony because it's not only a record high for the bilateral trade between China and the United States, it's also a record high in human history between any two countries in the world. Actually, even before Trump's arrival in China, we have already learned that Trump is leading one of the largest business delegations with 29 U.S. companies coming with him to China. And the Commerce Secretary of the United States has already said that this group is now seeking immediate results as well as the tangible agreements with China. That, of course, shows the close economic ties between China and the United States, but it's also part of Trump's efforts to reduce the massive trade deficit between China and the United States. We all know that Trump had a lot of China-bashing rhetoric during his presidential election, particularly in trade. But this time, when he's speaking in front of President Xi Jinping in the Great Hall of the People, he said that he does not blame China for the trade imbalances, but he blames the last administration for not having the proper policy. And President Xi Jinping responded warmly by saying that the business communities of China and the United States have made great contributions to secure a good Sino-US relations on political and strategic front. Peng, CGTN, Beijing.
Well, let's get you more perspective now on that story. I'm joined live from Beijing by Ting. She's an assistant research fellow at the China Institute of International Studies in the Department for American Studies. Also joining me in the studio is Dr. Robert Kagiri. He is the director in charge of strategy and policy management at the African Policy Institute. Well, let's start with you, Ting. What's the significance, do you think, of this visit by Donald Trump to China?
Hi. So obviously, this visit is being held as a very, very important moment. Well, today, I think it marks the anniversary of President Trump elected into presidency. And also here in China, we just concluded our 19th Party Congress, and we are entering a new era or a new age. So as we can see from the most updated news, the fruits that has been signed today is unprecedented and has a historical census, and more than $250 billion deals have been signed. This is unprecedented. And also, these fruits would not only just benefit the two countries, but also work for the good for the people of the two countries and also our wide business communities.
Okay, Ting, we're going to return to you in a moment. Now I'm turning to my guest, Dr. Kagiri. Thank you very much for joining us. These are the two largest economies in the world. Deals, as Ting was just saying, have been signed worth more than $250 billion. How closely should Africa be watching these deals between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping?
Well, both of them, we must remember, both of them are very close friends of Africa. We have had a colonial legacy, and America was not part of that from the Western side, and China has also been a great friend, especially in the liberation struggle for independence in Africa. So whatever deals they are signing there are of particular importance to us because we are looking for what we may call knock-on effects of those deals.
What would they be?
Well, some of the knock-on effects would be if there are some products that are required to, say, in manufacturing that we can also latch on to by producing the raw materials for those products in each of these countries. And then part of their trade deals and agreements might have a component of incentives for us to produce goods that are of importance to both of them. So we are watching to see this. We are also hoping that closer ties between the two nations will get a peace dividend here in Africa from having two of our friends working closely together, so that we do not have a situation where we are always in a position where we are competing between East and West. For instance, in Kenya, we have had Beijing, which is an American company, win a very big infrastructure project to build a Nairobi-Mombasa highway, the new one. And China the other day had won the SGR from Nairobi to Mombasa. So if we have this kind of situation where our two friends are both working together to help build infrastructure, build a manufacturing base in Africa, then it's all good for us.
Okay.
Yes.
That's great. We'll leave it there for a moment. I'll return to you in a second. Now let's go back to you, Gongting. Will these meetings between Trump and Xi Jinping lead to, do you think, a clearer US foreign policy when it comes to Asia?
Well, I don't think that the Trump's Asia policy is ambiguous, and I think that this administration clearly has a very priorities in its Asia policy. And the very first priority is to stay committed to U.S. commitment and also leadership in its military alliances system here in Asia Pacific. Trump may have a different approach. And obviously that the United States nowadays does not want to pay the bill itself and anymore, and urges its counterpart to pay the bill and to shoulder more responsibilities. And Trump did this and urged his counterparts during his visit to Japan and South Korea just before.
Okay.
And the second very priority is the trade deficit issue. And obviously that the countries, including Japan and South Korea, they have huge trade deficit in goods with the United States. And in his Asia trip this time, Trump urges once again to these countries that the trade deficit issue needs to be addressed, and American export to this region need to be enlarged.
Okay, Gongting, stand by. We'll return to you. Now back to my guest in the studio, Dr. Kagiri.
Yes.
What about Africa? Is there a clear US foreign policy here, do you think?
Oh yes, the US has a clear foreign policy for Africa. Yes, it does. A policy of continued engagement, increased trade between the two countries. They've also tried to deal with the trade imbalance, where surpluses have always been on the US side, through the AGOA agreement, which is an agreement that incentivizes African countries to, it's called the Africa Growth Opportunity Act, that was put together during the George Bush's reign and continued through the Bush presidency. So we have always been constantly engaged in terms of culture, in terms of trade, and they have always had a clear policy of engaging with Africa, especially the Anglophone African countries. So that has not been a problem. I think their main problem right now has been how to engage with Asia rather than with Africa. And this visit by Trump is an incredible opportunity for him, having less than superior credentials in terms of foreign policy and international relations with Asia. This is an opportune time for him through his whirlwind trip around 5 countries, 5 key Asian countries, including Japan and Vietnam, for him to better understand how to engage with Asia, which is a heterogeneous, not monolithic continent with its own aspirations. And the key issues that he's had a problem with, which is a trade imbalance with the Asian countries, where America has a trade deficit, the issues of what to do with the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. It's another big issue that he needs to do. And then also there's a big elephant in the room, which is Taiwan. Which US foreign policy has to deal with the one China policy. So there are all these things that this engagement, close one-on-one engagement with President Xi Jinping by Donald Trump, will help him form a better view, a personal view, on how to engage this large continent that is at the forefront of economic and cultural development as we go forward.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Kagiri.
Yeah.
Now, finally, to you, Gongting, to what extent will this visit, do you think, ensure closer cooperation between China and the United States? Which areas are the two leaders actually looking at?
First of all, I must say that face-to-face and close communication and talks between our two presidents, the president and top leadership of the world's largest developed and developing economy, is very crucial to the future and the direction of our relationship at not only bilateral level, but also at the regional and global level. And I think there are several issues that the two presidents' concerns for both sides. First is economic and trade cooperation. Obviously, as we can see from today, fruitful and very wide fruits have been achieved, and for companies and for business communities and across different sectors have been achieved. And also China now is one of the most important export destination for U.S. manufactured goods, including the agricultural goods and also the aeroplanes, energy goods, including the crude oil and the LNGs. And secondly, I think it is important in the sense of global governance. The two leaderships, the two presidents, they have attached great importance to cooperation between the two countries at a global level, including contributing to a greater connectivity across the globe, and also working in the issues including empowering the infrastructures, and also working together under the Belt and Road Initiative. I think in this sense, many of the world's region, including Africa, would be benefited.
Okay, Gong Ting, thank you very much. That was Gong Ting from the China Institute of International Studies, the Department for American Studies. And also I must thank my guest in the studio, Dr. Robert Kagiri. Thank you very much. You're from Director in Charge of Strategy and Policy Management at the African Policy Institute. Thank you.
Thank you.